Let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bryony Lieber. I'm a career and business coach. I work predominantly in the mining industry, and a lot of what I do is help my clients present themselves better both on LinkedIn and their CVs. And one of the reasons I wanted to hold this workshop today is because I'm getting inundated by requests from graduate students and young professionals to help review their CVs and give advice on how to write their CVs. And I can't deal with all the individual requests that I'm getting at the moment. So I'm hoping to be able to answer your questions here in this group setting and really use it as an opportunity for you to ask me anything. I also want to introduce Sarah Turnbull. She's very kindly agreed to help me manage this session. And Sarah is a great friend of mine and a wonderful geologist and woman in mining. And so hopefully she's also going to share some of her advice and her experience if the opportunity arises. The first thing that I want to say is your CV is your marketing document. All right, but it's only one tool in your toolbox when you're getting a job. So I want to talk about CVs, but I also want to talk about other tools in your toolbox at some point. Before we talk about CVs, I really want to position this as understanding who your audience is. So when you're writing a CV, you're writing a CV firstly for recruiters or recruitment managers who are very, very busy people. And in the market that you're in, there are generally hundreds, if not thousands of people competing for the same job as you. So when they receive your CV, you need to make sure that your CV is as easy for them as possible to read and as interesting for them as possible to read so that they want to read it. So that's my first point, is you're competing against a lot of people, and busy recruiters and recruitment managers want to see CVs that get straight to the point, that speak directly to what they're looking for, and that are short, okay? So one of the things that I often see is CVs that are 10 pages long with lots and lots of documentation attached to them and lots of certificates and IDs and all sorts of stuff. And the moment a recruiter sees all of that information, if that information isn't well packaged, it makes it hard for them to actually find what they're looking for. So my advice to everybody, whether you are a graduate student, whether you're a young professional, whether you're an executive that's been working for years and years, is it's critical for you to write a CV that gets to the point very quickly so that you are making it easy for the recruiter to read your CV and so that you're making it that they want to stay on your CV rather than flipping to the next person's CV that might be better written. Okay, so that's the first point. Second point I want to make is you're not just writing for a human being. You're writing your CV for a computer as well. Most CVs get submitted electronically, either through LinkedIn or through a careers portal on a website. And what happens when that CV gets submitted electronically is it goes through an algorithm that is looking for specific words that match up to the words that the recruiters have put into the jobs that they're advertising. The point about this is that if your CV doesn't have those words in it or those search phrases, there is a high risk that your CV is going to get stuck in the system and not actually end up on the desk of a human being. So the first thing that you want to be able to achieve is getting through the CV scanning systems, which we call applicant tracking systems. And those systems are, some of them are very intelligent and have been well programmed, and some of them are quite old and aren't very sophisticated. So from a CV formatting perspective, any CV that's got lots of photographs and pictures and icons and tables and lines and all sorts of fancy stuff that makes it visually appealing can actually be a problem when it's going through the tracking systems. So first thing is to make your CV as simple as possible. I see a lot of people putting together CVs that are visually interesting to look at with lots of pictures and lots of color and that sort of thing. But those CVs tend not to get through the applicant tracking systems. So you need to make sure that your CV is very plainly formatted with a very simple text. So Arial or Times New Roman or something like that, but nothing fancy. That it's got no boxes, no fancy colors, no tables, no lines in it, that it's just text. And that text is written in a way that speaks to the job that you're applying for. Okay? So I'm seeing a few questions in the chat. So Solofelo, you have asked, how many pages must your CV be and how do you fit everything onto the page? Okay, so that's a great question. So your CV at a graduate level or at a young professional level should be no more than 2 to 4 pages. Okay? Generally, 2 to 3 pages is the maximum, and the more experienced you get, the shorter your CV actually needs to be. So the immediate question straight after that is, how do I put everything onto the page? The key thing that I want you to know is that you don't have to put everything onto your CV. The purpose of your CV is to get you into the interview. So what you need to put onto your CV is enough information that makes the recruiter want to interview you and want to speak to you further, okay? And we'll talk about what that is. What is enough, what is too much? The second thing around how do I get all the information onto the page is you need to write succinctly. So you need to be very to the point and very brief in what you say. And I often see CVs where people write long sentences and full paragraphs and take a long time to get to the point. You don't need to write full sentences. You don't need to write paragraphs. A good CV is one that is written in very short sentences and bullet points. And the reason that's good is that it's easy for somebody to scan, okay? So it's easy for the scanning systems, the applicant tracking systems, to scan the information because it's focused on the words that the scanning system is looking for. All the extra words create noise. And the second reason is visually for a human being, when they're scanning for information on the page, if it's done in short sentences and in bullet points, and it's very focused on what they're looking for, it's a lot easier to read it quickly. If it's in full sentences with lots of words, the reader actually ends up having to read the whole document as opposed to scanning for keywords. The next question that I'm seeing here, so Josias, you've also asked, what's the standard page number? 2 to 4 pages, definitely not more than 4. And unless somebody specifically says to you, please send your certificates and your degrees and your ID and all of that, don't send them. If they want them, they'll ask you for them. So rather just focus on what they ask you for. The profile section of your CV is basically your executive summary, okay? It's the first section that you put on your CV. And it's your opportunity to summarize who you are, what skills you've got, and provide some evidence around those skills. And to highlight your achievements throughout your university career and any other achievements that you've had in your personal life, in your academic life, and in any volunteer work that you might have done, and in any VAC work or work that you've had. What you're trying to demonstrate in that profile section is that you are going to easily integrate into the world of work. So what recruiters are looking for there are things that firstly say you've got the qualifications to do the work, okay? And secondly, that you have the social skills, the leadership skills, the curiosity, the desire to learn, the self-leadership that enables you to step into the world of work and ask the right questions and step into a team very quickly and easily. Okay, so you want to be able to give examples there of not just the skills that you've got, but how you've used those skills. So I know there are quite a lot of geologists in this group. If you have done some VAC work on an exploration site and you've been responsible for logging core or for putting data into a database, instead of just saying, I can log core or I've managed data, you need to be able to say, what kind of core? In what geological contexts? On what sort of exploration sites? You need to be able to say, how much data have you logged? So there's a huge difference between having kind of put 20 data points into an Excel spreadsheet and 10,000 data points into something more technical than Excel. Sarah, I'm going to ask you quickly to add to this here, because you've logged a hell of a lot of core and managed a huge amount of data. And I'd love to get your input here on what differentiates somebody when they're saying that they've logged core. What are the sorts of things that you would look for, that you would want to know if somebody says they can log core?
So it's difficult on a graduate level because obviously I've, like you say, I've logged a lot of core, so immediately I can pick up the technicalities of it. So you want to start putting things on, is it orientated core? So was it an orientated core? That already tells me that you know that there's a difference between orientated and not orientated, and that you're not basically lying to me, because as someone that hasn't done any geological work, Bryony, you already know about core logging. So you need to sort of show your expertise and almost prove that there is some form of knowledge in what you're doing. So like you say, the mineralization, possibly the deposit that you've worked on, that would also be a great one to discuss. Any software that you then used with regards to the logging of the core, because sometimes there will be software, how you managed it. Did you take photographs of it? Did you create the database? Did you then work in Sable, or did it just go straight into Excel? So possibly just adding additional information so that I know that you are technically able to go and run a project, or at least look at some rocks without a more senior geologist having to babysit you. But that is only if you've done that. Don't go and put down that you've gone and logged core when you've really only looked at it once, because from a technical point, you'll pick it up immediately.
That's great. So, I mean, what Sarah's saying here is you can differentiate yourself based on the type of software that you've used, the type of core that you have logged, the geological context that you've worked in, the mining context that you've worked in, if you've had those experiences. And you know what, if you've only looked at core, then say so. It's better than only having read in a textbook. And what you're trying to do is just differentiate yourself from the next person, okay? And the best way to do that is to be as specific and as tangible as possible.
I have a question, not specifically on logging, but if you've worked in the consulting industry, so I'm a geologist, everyone,
Yeah.
So if you've worked in the consulting industry for company X, but you've consulted for company Z,
Yeah.
do you mention company Z in your little bullet point for company X, for the company you work for?
So unless it's confidential information, I would. The reason I would is that it gives a sense of credibility. But it also depends on the type of work that you've been doing. So if you've signed NDAs or anything like that, then obviously not. But if you're consulting and you do work for a number of different mining clients in different mining contexts, you want to flesh that out. So you really want to be able to say, I've consulted to Anglo Platinum, Anglo Coal, Rio Tinto, whoever, and had exposure in open cast, underground, coal contexts, rare earths, whatever. Because it starts to give a sense of complexity. And
yes,
as your complexity increases, that gives you the ability to start seeing different trends. It starts giving you the ability to see different themes, and you start being able to identify different risks and opportunities. So if you've only ever worked in the same context, you're going to get great specialist depth in that particular context, but it limits your ability to deal with a range of things outside of that context. And so it very much depends on the relevance to the job that you're applying for. If you're applying for something where you need specialist depth in a particular context, your broad exposure to a lot of different contexts may be less valuable there. But in a consulting environment, broad exposure is really important because it gives you the opportunity to be flexible across different contexts. And in consulting, you're going to deal with a wide variety of problems that you need to solve. So the broader and more complex your experience, the more you've got to build on. So yes, short answer. If it's not a confidential situation, I would definitely talk about who you've consulted to and the context and the type of work that you've done for them.
If I can just add there, sorry, Bryony, to cut you off. What I've also done on my CV, which has really helped me a lot, but I've been fortunate enough to have done this, is I've worked under really fantastic CPs, competent people or competent persons. So everyone moving up as you start working under them, that also has really helped because it shows that you've had great training, and the geological world is actually really very small. So if you're putting down a name that means a lot to someone, it's not necessarily even a reference. It just shows that you've had training under them, and that's really helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Most people that you have worked under will be more than happy for you to mention their names if you've done good work with them. So it speaks to getting testimonials from the people that you've worked under. And I always recommend that if you've done good work with somebody and you can get a testimonial from them that they will put onto your LinkedIn profile for you, that speaks huge volumes. Because if somebody will write a public testimonial on LinkedIn, what it says to everybody who sees that is this person is willing to speak public about you. They're willing to have their name associated with you. And most people know that on LinkedIn, the person, so you, if the testimonial has been written about you, you can't mess with that testimonial. You can't write it for somebody and you can't edit it. All you can ask is for somebody to write a testimonial for you. And if you are happy with it, then you can publish it onto your LinkedIn profile. But you can't edit it. So it gives it huge credibility. And then speaking to that, is anybody that you ask to be a reference for you, ask them to write a testimonial for you on LinkedIn. It says kind of in two different ways, here's somebody who I'm willing to put forward as a reference, and they've publicly spoken for me, okay? If you're then submitting your CV, make sure that your references know that you're submitting your CV for a job. make sure they know what job you're applying for, and send them a copy of your latest CV and give them a call. The worst thing you can do is ask somebody to be a reference, or not ask somebody to be a reference and put it on your CV. And then they get a surprise phone call and they haven't spoken to you in 2 years and they can't remember who you are, or they've got a vague recollection. So anybody that you're putting down as a reference, make sure that you're keeping in contact with them every couple months. Make sure that they know what you're doing in your career. And when you apply for a job, give them a call or drop them an email with, here's a heads up, this is my CV, this is the job that I'm applying for, and ask, can we maybe have a chat so I can refresh your memory on why you think I'm so wonderful?
Thank you. And that's also part of the whole networking, keeping your relationships alive and going.
Absolutely.
So that's good. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Megan, that's a great point, because as I started at the beginning, your CV is just one part of the tools in your toolbox. The other tools in your toolbox are networking and building strong relationships and making sure that you are positioning yourself in your network as somebody that people need to know about. So if you're only relying on your CV, you are being quite reactive to the market. If you are on LinkedIn and you're building networks and relationships with people, and every now and again you post something about an event that you've gone to, or something that you've learned, or a new skill that you've picked up, or some work that you're doing, it slowly but surely drip feeds into your network that you are engaged and you are active and you're involved. And if you comment on other people's posts and share their posts and add value to their posts, it says to your network that you've got opinions, that you have some knowledge, that you have some thoughts. And it eventually builds up a perception around you as somebody who is engaged and who people can talk to easily, somebody who is willing to put themselves out there and is managing their professional brand. So your CV is important because it's what you send as your marketing document to get into an interview. But just as important these days is how actively you network and engage and build relationships.
Yes. May I add one last thing?
Please.
On LinkedIn, I have no problem, connecting with people whom I've never met, but I see something interesting on their profile, and I'd like to know more about it, and I'd ask them if they can, shed some light, because I might be going into that direction. So the thing that irritates me the most is when people just message me and just say hi.
Yeah.
And then they don't get to the point, introduce yourself in your opening message, and ask your questions. Yeah. Otherwise, how are you? It's a social platform, but it's not Facebook.
Yeah. 100%.
It's difficult if you haven't met the person.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point to make, and we're going off CVs at the moment, but I think this is critical to talk about.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
That was my last point.
So I use the analogy that LinkedIn is an online conference, okay? And if you're at a conference, your profile is your stand at the conference, okay? So it's your presence there. But if you are at a conference and all you do is hide behind the pot plant, nobody's going to know you're there. So if you're on LinkedIn and you're not saying anything, nobody knows that you're there. The second part of a conference is chatting to people while you're at the conference, okay? So in between sessions, you walk up to a group of people, you chat to them about the talks that you've heard, you share some of your ideas, you kind of hand them your business card, or you write your details on a piece of paper. The equivalent of that on LinkedIn is engaging with the content that comes up on your LinkedIn feed. So if somebody shares a post and you go and comment on it, that's like you joining a conversation and saying, oh, I liked what you said there. I want to ask you another question. Okay?
Yes.
So if you see something that interests you, comment on it. Say, I liked this post. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this? Or I had this experience and I just wanted to share this with you. And treat your engagement on LinkedIn like a conversation. So that's the first point that I want to make. And then to your point of when you go and connect with somebody, if you were at a conference, you wouldn't just walk up to somebody and stand there and look at them and say, hello. Hey, that would be weird, right? But that's exactly what you're doing on LinkedIn when you connect with somebody and then you go, hello.
Yeah.
It's strange. So pretend this is just a proxy for a conference or a networking event, and do what you would do at a conference or a networking event. If you walk up to somebody that you've never met before, you typically say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'd like to connect with you because I listened to your talk at this event. Or I've been following you for a while and I now want to make myself known to you, and this is why. Okay? Then at least you're helping them understand who you are and what you're about and what you're actually looking for. It's still long before you're saying to them, okay, now I want you to give me a job. Okay? So don't ever start a conversation with give me something. It's more about I just want to get to know you. And this is why I want to get to know you. So there's a whole series of steps in building your network, whether it's in real life or whether it's on LinkedIn. And if you can start with, this is why I think you're interesting, and this is what I'm all about and why I think we should connect. And then a week or two later, I saw one of your posts. I really liked what you had to say. I'd love to chat to you about it. And then a couple of weeks later, I've been following you for a while now. I'm working in the same industry as you, and I'm wanting to identify some mentors. At that point, you've lubricated your relationship enough to actually start saying what you're looking for.
I wish my whole network was listening to what you just said.
Well, I'm recording this, so I will share it, and hopefully your whole network will hear it.
Okay, then I'll share it so they can hear this.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks, Sarah, for your input.
Oh, cool.
And then the third part of the conference analogy is you doing a keynote speech or doing a presentation at an event, okay? And that's where you are posting your own content onto LinkedIn and writing your own LinkedIn articles. And what that starts to do is position you for your knowledge, for your opinions, for your expertise. And it starts to, if you stick to a couple themes that you want to be known for, it starts to create an understanding of who you are and what you're about. And if you do it consistently enough, people will start looking for your content. And ultimately, that's what you want, is for people to notice you. And when a position comes up, for them to be thinking, I know somebody who I see regularly talking about this type of work, and I think I want to contact them and get their CV. If you can do that, then you are doing a really good job at networking and building your professional brand. Next question I see here is it okay to put links on our CV? Okay, so what happens when you put a link on your CV is it creates a line under the text, okay? So if you've got a hyperlink, it creates a line. And everything that I've understood about the applicant tracking systems is that you don't want vertical or horizontal lines. So I would put your email, you definitely should put your email address in, and you definitely should put your LinkedIn address on your CV, but I tend to unlink them so that it stops being a hyperlink. And that way there is absolutely no reason for the applicant tracking systems to get caught up with underlining. And that, as the systems get more sophisticated, that may not be a problem anymore. But for me, I would rather make sure that there is absolutely no formatting that's going to cause problems with the applicant tracking systems. And so from my perspective, put the information in there, but take out the hyperlink so you don't end up with any underlining. There's another question here. Are horizontal lines to divide sections of the CV bad for the ATS? My understanding is yes. So horizontal lines, text boxes, tables, columns, anything that is visually interesting for a human being can potentially be a problem for the tracking systems. And that speaks to the next question around photographs, or around adding icons, or around adding anything else that could be visually interesting. My advice on photographs is exclude a photograph unless you are asked to include a photograph. And there are two reasons for this. The applicant tracking system is the one reason, but the more important reason from my perspective is that we all have our own unconscious bias. And what that means is we all make assumptions about people based on our upbringing and our beliefs and our assumptions about the world. And the moment you put a photograph or lots of personal information onto your CV, you open yourself up for the risk of people making decisions on the basis of their unconscious bias or their prejudice. The less you put on a CV that is personal, the less chance there is for anybody to bring their prejudices, whether they are intentional prejudices or completely unconscious prejudices, and to use those to interpret whether you are the right person for the job or not. I recommend leaving off your hobbies. I recommend leaving off your religion, your politics, anything that personally people could have an issue with. Okay? It doesn't mean that any of those things are wrong. It just means that as human beings, we tend to judge people from our own personal perspective. And if somebody doesn't like a particular look or a particular sport or a particular person, they're going to judge you for that consciously or unconsciously. And you're going to get excluded for no good reason. Would it be beneficial to add your LinkedIn link? Absolutely. Put in your LinkedIn. So I've already covered, don't put it in as a hyperlink, but definitely put in your LinkedIn address, okay? The reason for this is recruiters go straight to LinkedIn to look for you, and they do that for two reasons. The one reason is there's only so much information you can put onto your CV. So often recruiters go to LinkedIn to see if there is additional information about you. On LinkedIn, you can add in your websites and your blogs and PDF documents and links to all sorts of additional information that adds richness to your profile. You can't put all of that onto your CV. So use LinkedIn as an opportunity to keep updating information about you. Every time you publish an article, or you complete your dissertation, or you complete your degree, or there are so many free online courses at the moment. If you complete an online course, or you do anything, add it to LinkedIn, okay? And that gives recruiters and recruitment managers and anybody on your network a sense that you are engaging in your industry and you are engaging in your career and you are actively improving yourself on an ongoing basis. It's hard to update that sort of thing into your CV all the time, but LinkedIn is your dynamic opportunity to keep your career constantly updated. So definitely put your LinkedIn URL in. The second thing is that it also, if you've got a well-written LinkedIn profile, you are engaging regularly on LinkedIn and you are actively building your network, it immediately says to people that you are actively engaged in your career. So I guess the second piece of advice is actively use LinkedIn as another marketing tool for yourself. does the CV scanning algorithm go through one's cover note? I often find that the online application systems allow you to put your work experience and qualifications, but at the end you get to load your CV. Should one assume that your CV only gets read once it's passed the screening? Your CV only gets read once it's passed the screening. That is absolutely true. So everything that you submit electronically is going to go through a screening system because it cuts down the work for the recruiters, okay? It helps filter out the people that aren't relevant or aren't at the top of the list for that position, okay? So there are two problems with that. If you submit a generic CV and it doesn't connect with the words that the algorithms are scanning for, you might be the best candidate, but the way that you've written your CV is going to prevent you from getting through. But what it does is it cuts down the work for a human being, okay? So assume that everything you submit electronically is going to go through the applicant tracking system and get scanned. Does your cover note get scanned? I'm actually not 100% sure, but I would assume that it does, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Josias, in terms of adding such skills on CV, how far back should they be dated? As in, does things 8 to 10 years ago count? So my suggestion there is focus first on the things that are most relevant to the job that you're applying for. Our education has a half-life. Work that we've done 10 or more years ago has a half-life if we haven't continued to do that sort of work. So whatever is most relevant and most recent, put at the top of your CV. And what that means is that if you're applying for lots of different types of jobs and some of your skills are more relevant to one job than to the other job, you probably need to have more than one version of your CV. You need to have a version that speaks to job A, and that may mean that you need to reorganize your skills and your information so that the information that's relevant to job A is at the top of CV A. And if job B is something completely different, then you should reorganize so that the relevant skills and experience for that particular job are prioritized at the top of that CV. So the point that I'm trying to make there is generic CVs are not a great idea because they don't make it easy for the recruiter to get the information they want really quickly. All right. Are cover letters and motivational letters necessary to add and when one is applying for a job? So yes, and I want to tell you why, Ayanda. So the point of your cover letter is to really connect you to the specific job that you've applied for. So while I've said that your CV should be as focused as possible to the job that you're applying for, sometimes you will have a CV that responds to lots of the same types of jobs, but the job that you're applying for is going to be in a specific company, okay? And that specific company is going to have specific needs. And in your cover letter, you have the opportunity then to demonstrate why you are relevant for that specific job in that specific company, and to highlight just a few more things that might not feature in your CV that are relevant to motivating your case for that job. So for instance, I don't suggest that you put personal information in your CV. I suggest that you keep that as technical as possible. But if you've got a specialized skill, or you're doing something quite unique, you may want to highlight that on your cover letter. Your cover letter would be a great opportunity to highlight the fact that you've been promoting yourself on LinkedIn by doing videos of your skills and who you are and why people should employ you. And you're really stepping out and trying to create a presence. Your cover letter would be a great place to talk about that. You can't put that into your CV, but you can highlight it on your cover letter. Often, a cover letter is asked for anyway. So always have a cover letter available and make it specific to that job. And what I'll do is I've got a template for a cover letter that kind of gives you a recipe on how to write one. So I'll add that into the chat box just now, and then I'll also put it onto my LinkedIn business page so that you can grab it from there, okay? Graduate students, I would advise that you put your references onto your CV, okay? Which also means that you need to tell your references that they are on your CV, and they need to know when you're sending your CV out. But I would definitely advise that you have references on your CV. However, once you've had a couple years of experience and you've changed jobs a few times, you often lose contact with references, or you want to update more recent or more appropriate references. And at that point, when you've got a little bit of work experience, I suggest not putting references onto your CV and not saying available on request, because it's irrelevant. If a recruiter wants references, they're going to ask you for references. But the reason I say don't put references onto your CV once you've had a few years of experience is that you need to be able to control the process of people getting in contact with your references. If you've got people as references on your CV, a recruiter can contact them without you knowing. And you miss the opportunity then to firstly have a conversation with your reference, to talk to them about the job, to check what they're going to say about you, and to help shape that conversation. So by keeping them off your CV, it means that a recruiter is going to have to contact you to ask for references. That means you can then decide who specifically is most appropriate as a reference for this particular job. And it gives you the opportunity to brief that reference, have a conversation with them, and ensure that they are willing to speak on your behalf for that job. Katerina, how to make a CV attractive for a job that you have not enough experience for, but you really want that job and you're ready to learn everything they need? What I'm understanding from that question is, how do you communicate your potential? Okay. And in my experience, your potential is two things. It's the fact that you have a willingness to learn and a curiosity about learning, and that you have stepped out of your comfort zone and taken the initiative to learn and push yourself in a particular direction. So for me, it's about talking about your volunteer experiences that might be relevant to that work. If you're not volunteering or you're not getting involved in things, you need to start getting involved in things now. If you can't get work experience, get involved in offering your time to people, perhaps in your professional bodies, volunteering your time to various initiatives. All of that gives you access to people that perhaps you wouldn't ordinarily get access to. It gives you the opportunity to learn business skills, because what you do when you volunteer is you organize things, you help fundraise, you communicate with people, you analyze information, you help set up events. Those are all really functional skills that help you step into a workplace very quickly. Okay? So if you're not getting those sorts of experiences, take the initiative to put yourself forward to get those sorts of experiences. If you've had those sorts of experiences, talk about them on your CV. Your CV doesn't just have to be about your academic career and your formal work experience. It can also cover things around any initiatives that you've taken to build your self-leadership and engage in your communities, in your professional bodies, and in any forms of volunteer or unpaid work. If you have an obligation to work within a given sector due to a trust or a bursary, should you include this in your CV if you're sending it to another company that may buy over your bursary? I would put that in a cover letter. I think it is important to declare, and I think it's also important that if you have a bursary, that's an achievement. And you would want to highlight in your CV that you have won a bursary with a particular company and what that bursary covers. Which format would you recommend for a recent graduate who does not have any relevant work experience in the field that they're applying for?
So I'm a graduate in computer science, but I've never done like anything that is tech related during my studies. But I did promotions and modeling stuff, but volunteering, like I did other things. But I had like a one boot camp in the beginning of this year. Now that's what I'm talking about. Like I have experiences, but in other things other than the field that I am in.
Okay. So tell me, what did those other experiences teach you? What sort of skills did you develop there?
Communication, leadership, time management. I got also like team working with other people, understanding them, and negotiation, because in promoting you have to negotiate with people and understand clients, and yes, and persuading people, because sometimes we have to like get people to try the products even though they're not in the mood of doing that.
You've got some skills that would be very useful in the workplace, because being able to promote and sell and inspire people to do something that they don't necessarily want to do is an important skill. In the workplace, you're going to need to work with people. You're going to need to get them to give you information. You're going to need to get them to deliver on deadlines. You're going to need to get them to communicate with you. And the skills that you're describing are what we call portable skills. So they're skills that you can take from one industry into another. And the more portable skills you have, the easier it is for you to move into different jobs. Okay, so you might not have the technical skills of computer science. You've just got the knowledge that you've developed through studying. You don't have the experience yet. But what you have are skills that make it easy for you to step into the world of work, because you've already had experience of working, and of working with people, and of negotiating and communicating with people. And those are things that companies look for, because it makes it just a little bit easier for you to be productive and be engaged in your work than somebody who's never stepped into a workplace before.
Another question that I have that is linked to this, is it wise for me then to write like my other experiences in my CV, or should I just like maybe focus on my skills instead?
So tell us about some of your other experiences.
Okay, I was tutoring. I was a private tutor for maths. So, and another skill that I have, another experience that I have was modeling. I was an extra. So it's mostly those three things that I did over the years.
Okay. So when you're tutoring, what skills are you using?
Communication, again, leadership. I also teaching someone, but that I don't know that if that's a skill, but being able to like explain something like a topic to a student and listening to them and communicating with their parents and finding out if what, like working with them and finding out what can we do in order for us to help the student.
Being able to teach people concepts, break down information into concepts that people can understand, being able to listen for their understanding and correct them and redirect them in the right direction. Those are valuable skills in the workplace. Being able to communicate, valuable skill in the workplace. Being able to communicate at different levels, so with young people as well as with their parents. That's speaking at different generational levels. Those are really useful skills. And if you can communicate that on your CV in a way that connects with how that's relevant in the workplace, then absolutely you should be talking about them. And my advice there is be tangible in how you communicate them. So if you say one of your skills is tutoring, then say, how many people did you tutor? At what level were you tutoring? In what subjects? And what were the outcomes from that tutoring? Okay? So what did you achieve through that? Because what that communicates then is how you've used those skills and how you've created impact through those skills. Okay?
Okay.
And the final part of that is if you can then use that to make a very explicit connection about how that helps you communicate tasks to people, how that helps you to delegate, how that helps you to give feedback, that's valuable. So in every skill that you've got, whether it's directly linked to the work that is the technical component of your work, if you can make a link that says this is how this skill is relevant and how I can apply it, it becomes quite an important part of your toolbox. Okay.
Okay.
That's a nice
Thank
question.
you very much.
Thank you for asking that.
Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, Chelsea. A lot of people are held back in getting their CVs picked because of their names, part of the unconscious bias, unfortunately.
So a lot of the time people truncate their names, and it just makes business easier for them to do, because it becomes a more memorable name as well.
Yeah.
So how do we present our working name on our CV? Is it just something that goes in inverted commas, or do we just put it there because we actually don't like having our given name being used even within the family? What is the best strategy for this?
So my suggestion would be use the name that you like to be called by every single day. Okay? And if that is a truncated name or it's an English version of your name or whatever it is, then use it. I would, however, suggest that you then are consistent across every single one of your platforms, so that on your CV you use the same name, on your LinkedIn you use the same name, the way you save your CV as a document you use the same name, and that there's a level of consistency there. I would also suggest that you use your given name and perhaps put that in brackets, or you make sure that it's represented so that when somebody's comparing your CV and your LinkedIn to your ID document, that it all lines up. So for me, it's more about consistency, because what I've seen quite a lot of is people using one name on a CV and a completely different name on their LinkedIn profile. And that's where the confusion starts to come in. If you have a name that's quite difficult for a potential employer to pronounce, then, as you said, on LinkedIn, you can now record your name. So that gives you one thing that makes it a little bit easier for people to get to know your name. And you can use it almost as an icebreaker. I didn't realize that LinkedIn really affected my career opportunity. Tomorrow?
Well, sorry, should I start the video?
Yeah, if you want to put your video on, that'd be great.
Okay, hello, I'm from Indonesia, so I am really very sorry because I don't really speak English well.
I think you speak English beautifully, and welcome from...
Thank you. Thank you. I study petroleum processing engineering, which is not really common in my country, and really not common for a girl like me. So I found it like it's just I don't want to say wasting of time, but I don't know how to promote myself on LinkedIn, because I believe that people in my industry or in my relevant job with my studies is like just looking for a man instead of woman.
Yeah, so, this is a common challenge for people who work in male-dominated industries. And I think we come at this with our own perceptions and our limiting beliefs around ourselves as women. And there are structural issues in some of these industries, and there are other individuals' mindsets around what's appropriate and what's not. But my first piece of advice to you is you need to take ownership of yourself. You've chosen to work in an industry where firstly, it's not a common industry. Secondly, it's not a common industry for women to work in. And the first thing is, well done to you for following something that you're interested in, okay? If you want to stay in that industry, it's up to you to position yourself as an expert in your industry and to start talking about your expertise, your experience, your knowledge, and building your networks. That said, it's really hard when you're getting the impression that the system is against you, okay? So connect with other women, okay? There are a lot of women on the floor. Connect with other women who are leading in their fields, who are working in similar industries or different industries that are also male-dominated. Find yourself a mentor who you can chat to about what it means to be a woman in a male-dominated industry. Get involved in groups that can support you in these sorts of conversations. And at the end of the day, my perspective is, as individuals, we have to de-genderize our work. If you see yourself as a woman in the industry versus a professional in the industry, it's going to have you're going to have a different approach to things. That's my personal perspective. So I want to encourage you to see yourself as a professional in your industry and to start connecting with other professionals. And if the easiest point to connect with is other women, whether they're in your industry or not, start there, because then you can start having conversations around where you're finding challenges and get guidance on how other women overcome similar challenges.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. That's very inspiring to me. Thank you so much.
Sarah, do you want to jump in? You're a powerful woman in a difficult industry. Megan, so are you. Chelsea, so are you.
Yeah, so I actually, that's why I put my video on, is because I did want to jump in, and I think I'm fortunate enough that I come from a country where they don't sort of oppress women, and I've actually been fortunate enough that I think that a lot of the positions I've got is because I'm a woman, and they actually want to break up that testosterone sort of arguments between the guys, and often you can facilitate it a little bit better. What I do want to say is that generally it is a bit tough, regardless of if you're a man or a woman. It is a tough environment in general, so you have to sort of be tenacious enough to continue in that environment and know that you're setting, I don't want to say setting yourself up for this, but this is the profession that you're going into. So like with Bryony says, I do definitely encourage you to get hold of other women, and I've found a lot of help with women and encouragement. So I would definitely, we can connect on LinkedIn and take it from there. But go for it, really, and don't hold yourself back. I think that's a huge point. Is go for it.
Thanks, Sarah.
And there's Megan as well.
Yes, Megan, tell us your thoughts.
Yes, sorry for not switching my camera on for you, Bryony, but I did it for tomorrow. First of all, tomorrow your English is impeccable, and you should really be more confident about it to command like the room. Being in a male-dominated industry, you're gonna have to have like unfortunately, it's a very masculine energy. And it's something that I've struggled with. It's to embrace my femininity as well. I always found that I want to be masculine to kind of level up with the men and to prove my worth. But actually, you should just be, I'm not going to say we're smarter. We should just be smart about it and embrace the femininity, because with that, there are many other strengths that can also level you up to be on that level, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know how to explain it. So, yeah, you're going to have like a thick skin, but you can always use your empathy to outsmart any like harsh reactions from a male-dominated industry. And at the women in mining thing, someone said it's not a male-dominated industry. It's a, what did they say, Barney?
Male-populated, which was the best line ever.
Yeah.
Yes, it's male-populated, not male-dominated.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we'd love to connect with you because Brian and Sarah are involved with WIMSA, which is Women in Mining. And I think that a lot of people, even outside the mining industry, and I also find that men who have sat in on that, those diaries, I think it's such a good platform for not only for women, but I don't think there's a platform like that for men out there.
Mm.
So I think it's such a good thing. And I've learned a lot of things on there. And I want tomorrow to get involved.
I want tomorrow to get involved too. Megan, thank you for that. It's in fact, everybody here is welcome to join our Women in Mining platform. This month we're having meetings every Thursday evening. So for Indonesia, that might mean that they're midnight for you tomorrow, unfortunately. But we are recording them and they are on Facebook. And I'll share the link to that just now as well. But what we really feel in that community is that there is a place for everybody, and all we're trying to do is create a platform where eventually we don't have to talk about women in mining or women in any particular industry, because we all experience each other as professionals. But the first point is to start having these conversations. And I love the fact that we've got some men starting to join our conversations, because it's opening up views and perspectives about things that otherwise we don't talk about. And I definitely want to echo what Megan said. Tomorrow your English is spectacular, and it's something that you can really leverage. And with LinkedIn, you've got an opportunity to build networks across the world, not just in Indonesia. And it gives you the opportunity to position yourself in front of people who perhaps would be more accommodating of you than the Indonesian community that you're in. And I know nothing about Indonesia, so but the point is that you can connect with anybody across the world. And here you are, suddenly you've pitched up online in a group of largely South Africans, and you are braver than most of us have ever been. I don't think I've ever attended a webinar in Indonesia it's very brave to just Chelsea, you had your mic off at one stage. I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, just pretty much echoing what Sarah and Megan saying, but also you're not seeing yourself as other in a space. That is your space. We belong there. We are worthy and valid to be there. And oftentimes what we're feeling is a little bit of imposter syndrome, which is something everybody struggles with, I think, especially when they're working with people who don't look or sound like them. But often, just for anyone who is struggling with those kind of thoughts and feelings, just to engage with people, engage with material on the internet, lots of good articles out there, just to kind of validate how you feel and understand that it's just a temporary feeling. And as long as you're making small steps forward and asserting yourself in spaces, especially when you feel uncomfortable, that's actually the painful growth that is needed.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Chelsea. I'm really glad that you added that. And you know, these messages go to everybody in this room. It's not just for one individual. I think we all struggle with the same issues, and it's really important for us to all hear that other people struggle with these same issues, because you're not alone and all of these issues can be overcome. There are a lot of questions around, can we actually see what a CV looks like that beats the applicant tracking system? So I want to try to share my screen quickly. All right, so you should be able to see my screen, and on my screen is a CV in a very simple format. This is the very boring format that helps you get through the applicant tracking system. A lot of the CVs that I see have a cover page with your name and CV written on the cover page. Then another page with all of your personal details. None of that is necessary. All you need to have on your CV is your name and surname, your phone number, your email address, and your LinkedIn URL, okay? So that's it from a personal perspective. Make sure that that's at the top, and if you want to, then put the same information into the footer so that if you've got several pages, your information comes up on each page. I've specifically said here a Gmail address, or it could be a Yahoo address, or it could be a anything address. But what I see on a lot of CVs, especially for graduate students, is the use of a university email address. So it's often your student number plus the university server. And if you've got that on your CV, I want to encourage you now, if you have a Gmail address, or if you don't, go and register one, so that follows you around forever, because you lose your university address at some point. And if you've got an old CV floating around with an incorrect or an old email address that you no longer have, people aren't going to be able to get hold of you. The other thing that I want to say is I often see CVs where people have come up with a creative name for themselves in their email. So I love chocolate, or mouse 3, or cute guy, or something like that. And that's not, it's fun, but it's not professional. So I always suggest that you keep it very simple and make your email address just your name and your surname, so that, again, it's memorable and it aligns with the name on your CV, your name on LinkedIn, and anywhere else that people are going to see your name. Okay. Then the second part of your CV is your profile. Okay. And your profile is your executive summary. So what you want to put into your profile is a very short summary of what you've achieved in your career to date. And your career may purely be your academic career. But if you've had volunteer experience, or you've had leadership positions in your professional bodies, or you've had some work experience, whether it's been paid work or unpaid work, you need to summarize that here as well. And the key things that you want to be able to communicate here are what you've achieved, in what contexts, and what range of things you've been involved in, so that a potential employer can get a sense of not just what you know, but what experience you have and how easily you can be absorbed into the workplace. So if you've read something versus you've been to site to see that same something, or you've actually had hands-on experience in applying your skills, so you've not just seen it or been to site, you've done something with that particular thing, or you've written a report on it, or you've stood up and done a presentation. Flesh that all out, because it gives us a sense of how deep your experience has gone in a particular area. Okay. Then the next section is speaking about your skills. And your skills can be absorbed into your profile section, or you can put them as a completely different section. But what's most important here is not just to say you have a skill, but actually give an example of how you've applied that skill. So there's a big difference between saying, I can do research, and I can do research on these particular topics using these particular research methodologies, and I've used that research to develop something, okay? So the more tangible you can make your examples, the better. Intangible means being specific about the type of thing that you've done, or the software that you've used, or the methodology that you've employed, or the number of times you've done it, or the depth to which you've analyzed something, or the kilometers of call that you've logged, or anything else. So anything that you can turn into a number, or something that you can describe qualitatively, put that in as part of your information in your CV. What I'm really trying to say here is, don't tell people that you have a skill, show them how you've used that skill. Then, if you're a graduate student, your qualifications are probably going to outweigh your professional experience. If, however, you have more professional experience than you have qualifications, then just flip this around. So if you have very little professional experience, focus first on your qualifications. If you've had fantastic marks, or you've had a specific focus of your research or your thesis or your honors dissertation, put in the details around that particular information. And then after that, speak about your professional affiliations. So if you're students right now, or if you're unemployed right now and you are not associated with any professional bodies, I highly encourage you to go and register with your professional bodies. It's a great opportunity to network. It's a great opportunity to meet people in the profession and to start having conversations with them. And if there are opportunities to volunteer and help in those groups, then it's a great opportunity to get some practical experience as well. I know somebody's going to say to me, but Bryony, you've got lines in your CV, and you're absolutely right. There shouldn't be horizontal lines here. So before I distribute this, I'll take those out. What I often do when I'm preparing a CV is I put in the lines, because it helps me visually structure where I am. And then before I finalize it, I take the lines out. So don't do what I've done. And I will share this without the lines. And the point that I wanted to make here about saving your CV, so at the bottom of your CV, just put the name, so your name and surname, CV, and then the date that you prepared this, okay? That helps give an indication of, is this a recent CV, or is this something that might be out of date? And then you want to move over to your relevant professional experience. So if you've had work experience, what you want to be able to communicate here is, firstly, what has the range of that experience been? Secondly, what skills you've used and applied in that experience. Thirdly, what you've achieved in that position, so any kind of major achievements that you've had. And then fourthly, what span of responsibility you've had. And over the course of your career, if you can start showing that in each position you have, that you've increased the complexity of work that you've done, that you've increased your responsibility for what you have decision-making responsibility over, and that you've widened your span of control. And what that means is, your span of control is eventually how many people report to you or you manage. So for instance, on an exploration site, you might not have direct people who report to you, but you might be responsible for signing off on the work of drilling contractors or overseeing people on site. That's going to be your span of control. Your span of control is also if you have responsibilities for any budget. So if you're on an exploration site and you have responsibility for dispersing funds for daily expenses, then put that on your CV. It shows a level of responsibility. And then you also want to be able to elaborate on communication, reporting, presentations, your interface with different stakeholders in the organization. So do you only ever work with people in your department and at your level? Or do you work with people across different departments? And do you work up and down the organization? There's a big difference, for instance, somebody who works on a project is going to have access to people in different departments and at different levels in an organization, versus somebody who works in a laboratory who might be confined to what happens in that laboratory and maybe their direct supervisor. So being able to explain that gives recruiters and recruitment managers a sense of what your exposure has been to complexity. And that's essentially it. So I'm just going to stop sharing that. So the point that I'm making there is your CV doesn't have to be complex. It can actually be quite simple, but it's very focused on specifically what's relevant to that particular job.
Hi, Brownie. Thank you for that. It was very, very insightful. I think just seeing the way you are able to show the practicality instead of just saying I'm a leader or I'm good at time management or, you know, just seeing the examples and being able to link the skills to actually the duties that was carried out for the jobs. That's one thing that stood out for me. And I'll be taking it into my CV. Definitely.
Good. I'm glad. And it's, you know, I'm really glad that you've emphasized that because it is critical. It's the real differentiator on your CV. I mean, I remember when I was writing CVs, when I was kind of early on in my career, it was just fine to list all of your skills. But there is so much competition now, and for every group of people who graduate, there's probably 400 other people who are graduating at the same time. And you have to be able to differentiate yourself from those 400 other people. So there's a couple things here. And for anybody who follows me or hears me talk regularly, you'll know that I say you have to manage your career like a business, which means you have to be really intentional in the decisions that you take and the opportunities that you look for and the way that you put yourself out there. And if you find yourself today in this room without any leadership experience, any volunteer experience, any work experience, and all you have is having completed your coursework, I want to encourage you to actively go and look for opportunities to get involved in something so that you can develop the skills that make you employable quite quickly. And those skills are working in teams, communicating with people up and down organizations, just purely having worked in a work environment, and having interacted with and having negotiated with people. Those become your critical differentiators because everybody is graduating with the same degree. So unless you've won lots of prizes in your degree and you've been top of the class and you've done something really phenomenal academically, your degree doesn't differentiate you anymore. It's your experience in the world of work that differentiates you as your foot in the door. The other thing that I want to add, and this is where LinkedIn is really your friend, is in putting yourself out there on LinkedIn. And really communicating about yourself and about things that you get involved in. So I'm going to say to you all after this, it would be wonderful if you go and post on LinkedIn that you attended the session and summarize what your key take-home points were. That is going to say to people, you took time out of your Saturday to develop your personal development, okay? you're investing your time in yourself. It's going to say that. It's going to say that you learned a few things today. And not only did you learn them for yourself and internalize them into your own career, but you have the ability to share that knowledge with other people who didn't attend the session. And when I share the link to this, forward the link to everybody else. It's an opportunity for you to put value into your network, and to say, here's a resource that might be of interest to your peers and to anybody else that you're connected with. And the more you do that, the more you start to create a presence for yourself.
Bronnie, it makes so much sense. And I mean, thank you for also taking your time to share this value with us. I mean, you didn't have to. And we really appreciate the impact that you're making here.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I want to suggest that we take 15 minutes to break up into breakout rooms, which means I'm going to put you in kind of groups of 5 or 6 into small rooms where you can take 15 minutes just to chat with each other, network, exchange contact details, chat about a few of your skills, and use it as an opportunity to come up with an example of how you've used that skill, so that you come out of the session with one skill with a tangible example. All right.
That was actually too quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to send you all back in again?
No, it's fine. We'll find each other on LinkedIn and start networking.
Good. I'm glad.
Building the networks. Thank you for the opportunity, Bronnie.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming along.
Hello, Sejo. I see you.
Hi, Megan. I see you too.
Look at this.
I told Sejo to attend today.
Excellent. Looks like you're attending all the way from the Northern Cape in some arid desert. And I'm sure that's a fancy background. It's very pretty.
Oh, it is actually the Northern Cape. You're so good. It's nice.
Very nice.
Clean Bella.
Very, very nice. Okay, so did everybody meet somebody or somebodies and connect with new people and have some discussions around skills and have a good conversation? Yes, excellent. Good. I'm glad. So there's a few other questions in here that I just want to address, and then we can open up the floor for the last 15 minutes. And then we're done. Suddenly, almost 2.5 hours are gone. So one of the questions here that I thought was interesting, Chelsea, you asked, should we rate our level of expertise on various software packages or languages, for example, beginner, intermediate, and expert? So what you consider to be expert and what I consider to be expert might be 2 very different things. So what I would suggest is that, yes, you can say you have expert skills in a software package, but then justify that with an example. Okay, because how you're going to define expert might be different to how I define it. And I would rather that you describe how you use that software, how extensive your experience is in that software and how you've applied it and in what sort of contexts, than just leaving it at expert. Okay, then Limani's got a question. Is it necessary to name all the subjects I did in grade 12? No, definitely not. I think once you've completed tertiary education and you've got some work experience, you don't even need to talk about your matric education. However, if you have no work experience and you are still completing your tertiary education and you have excellent results in your matric, then I would at least say what those results were. But don't list all of your subjects unless somebody specifically asks you for them. If they want to know about your subjects, they might ask you for a copy of your matric certificate, and then they can pick up the subjects from them. So really only put in detail that differentiates you from others, and that differentiates you in a really good way. So if you got distinctions, say so. If you didn't get distinctions, don't say so. Only draw attention to what helps you. Okay. How do I maintain and keep the people on my references updated with my job applications, considering that we apply for several jobs in a day? One could apply for 5 jobs in a day and some posts contact me months later. How does one navigate that? So that's a great question, Masangita, and that's, I mean, this speaks to how tough the job hunting environment is at the moment, and it really is a full-time job, and I fully understand how disillusioning it can be. So to your question around how do you keep references updated, I would have a practice of engaging with your reference at least once every 3 months. And that could be sending them a message on LinkedIn, or sending an email, or sending a text message, or just keeping a loose relationship with your references. And when you get in contact with them, just say, over the last couple of months, this is what I've been applying for. I'm just getting in contact again just to keep you up to date. If you've got a really good relationship with your reference, maybe ask if they want to get together for coffee, or just have a phone call for 5 minutes. All of this is about building your relationships and keeping those relationships current over the course of your career. So you don't have to send every reference a copy of your CV 5 times a day when you submit it. But I would say that if you're submitting your CV a lot, that you, every couple months, just say, these are the types of positions that I'm applying for, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. To the point of recruiters only contacting you months later, because this is a full-time job finding work, I highly recommend that you keep a spreadsheet of every application that you've submitted, which company you've submitted to, for what position, what version of your CV, what date you submitted it on, and keep a track of it that way. Because if you're submitting 5 CVs a day, it can get very confusing very quickly as to what's current and what's not. So, and it's just a good skill to develop, of organizing your information. It's like managing a database. And it's a good skill and a behavior to get into. Brian, you've asked, should we submit in PDF or MS Word? Submit in whatever you are asked to submit in. Sometimes you'll be asked to submit in both formats. If in doubt, I would submit in a PDF version. But if they want it in PDF or Word or both, they'll generally let you know. Cheryl, you've asked regarding hobbies. What if you've got a hobby that can illustrate your leadership skills or highlight some of your achievements? Absolutely. If you've got a unique hobby, or it's something really interesting that's going to break the ice and develop conversation, put it in. Checo, I'm going to ask you to put your mic on, because I'm dying to know what this hobby is that is going to demonstrate leadership and achievements.
So a while back, I had started a food stall where I was selling these glorified bunny chows that had all these incredible ingredients and all of that.
Excellent! I'm coming for bunny chow.
No, we social distancing. Stay away. So it's something that I've been like asking myself, should I add it to my CV? It's something that I do on the side sometimes. Or even my singing, I also sing for a jazz group. So, and I play drums for them as well. So yeah, it's stuff that I've been.
Okay, so tell me, what are the skills that you've developed through both those hobbies that could be relevant in a work environment?
So some of the skills would be organizing events. So I would have to, for that food business that I had, I'd have to organize the calendar for the month and say, we're going to do these markets. I'd have to organize people to work at each stall that we would be participating at. And I would have to also basically do the business development, send out proposals to these organizations, and also sell the product online and create awareness on social media.
Yeah.
And yeah, it built a lot of that.
Absolutely. You're doing marketing, you're doing selling, you are doing budgeting, you are organizing events and logistics, you're managing people, you are buying ingredients. There are so many skills there that say this is somebody who can lead a team, organize events, and organize a business. And there are entrepreneurial skills here and leadership skills, and this is somebody who steps out and takes an initiative as opposed to just waiting for a job to come to him. So absolutely, that is something that I would put onto a CV. Similarly, your jazz hobby, I would put onto your CV. Those are talking points, okay? I wouldn't give them kind of half a page. I would give them a line. But that's very different to saying, my hobbies are watching TV and playing soccer. If you play soccer and you're the captain of the team and you have taken your team to kind of championships and you have kind of won many events, put that on your CV. I wouldn't necessarily put it on your CV once you've had years and years and years of experience. I might post about it on LinkedIn and make it part of what I share as my content. But people want to know that you are more than just your job and that you are more than just your university degree. So when you can convey that you're a whole person and you've got interests and you can interact with people and that you can lead others and that you take initiative and that you can work in a team, it's wonderful because it gives a sense of people how you're going to engage in the workplace. So if it's interesting and it creates a talking point, definitely. If it's just stock standard reading and watching TV, maybe not. Thank you for asking the question. It was a really nice one. Graduated 5 years ago, still have no work experience as I'm trying some competitive exams. So now I'm on the job hunt. How do I write a CV with this 5-year gap? Okay, so at some point in your career, we all have a gap. And a lot of people are going to have a gap at the moment if they've been retrenched during COVID. And what I would suggest is that if you can talk about what you've learned in that gap, how you've developed yourself in that gap, what skills you've learned, how you have taken initiative and tried to maintain some level of productivity in that gap, then you create a very different perception to if you've had a 5-year gap and you've sat on the couch and done nothing with it. So if you've studied or you've volunteered or you've run your own business or you've raised children or you've done something that says you've used your time in the most productive way that you can, it's always going to be better than if you can't talk about what you've done in that gap.
Hi, my question is regarding the skill set. Whenever I'm writing my CV, whenever I get to the skills, I'm like, oh, all graduates like me, they all want to write, oh, we have Microsoft Office, we can do that, but what else can I do? And then I realized, and like throughout my entire degree, I've used so many softwares from Google Earth Pro, Sedlock, ArcGIS, Pass, Graph, like Gradistat, Inkscape, all of those I've used them, but then I don't know what level of confidence should I convey that in a CV and say that I've used all of this and use submitting my practicals. I've used all these softwares, but I just don't know to what level of confidence can I say I can operate all of these softwares. Okay. And unlike Microsoft, which everybody can use.
So everybody can use Microsoft, but I can tell you not everybody can use every feature in Microsoft. And it's the same in most software. So I'm not a software boffin at all, and I'm going to ask Checho and Megan to jump in here as well. But I would say that if you can describe what you've used the software for, then that's going to be a good start. And I would add to that on LinkedIn by making sure that you go to the skills section there and adding those types of software to your skills section so that you're searchable for those. And if you can be as tangible as possible, that you do that. But Megan, you have taken your microphone off, so jump in here.
So definitely an overestimation on the software boffin side of things. But to kind of relate back to the theme of searching for a job. So I've been in many interviews where I was the interviewee. So I was looking for a job. So in all my applications, I would have said, okay, so in my past experience on this job, I had experience in this software, that software, and another software. And then only in the interview process. So the job description said you must have experience in these type of softwares. And then in my CV, it just so happened that I did have experience in those type of softwares. And in my past experience, I would say, okay, when I worked for this company, I used this software to do that. So only during the interview process did they say, okay, I see you are competent, or you say you've used ArcGIS. Are you able to tell us how you've used it, how you've implemented it, on which project, and to what sort of extent? And so for a few softwares where I would have said, yes, I've used, let's say, Micromine or whatever, then I would say, yes, I listed it in my skill set, but actually it was more of I've been exposed to it, and I've been involved in the beginning parts of the modeling. But I haven't, and you have to be honest with yourself, because it's very important that you don't get thrown into the deep end and then you've got this job and you can't do the job. Mm-hmm. So then I would say, you know what, I was involved in the beginning stages up until there, but I didn't drive the software all the way through to the end project, but I observed and I assisted the competent person where I could. So you have to, like in my experience, I would list all the softwares I'd worked on. But in the interview process, you kind of need to clarify how you've used it, how you've implemented it. Because it also gives the interviewer an understanding of where you are in the process. And it's not a bad thing, because in one interview they said, oh, okay, I interviewed for a company where they said, oh, you don't even have any experience in our software. That's fine, that's not a problem. We will train you up. Mm-hmm. But you've been honest with us, so we know we have to allocate a certain amount of time so we can train you up on it. So a lot of the times it's about your ability to learn a new software. But for a lot of the roles, and they also look not just at your software competency, but you need to be able to have a personality where you can work in a group, where you can teach other people. So they kind of look towards that. But if you're able to learn the new software, then that's the actual thing. Mm. So that's where your ability to learn the software, in my opinion.
And I want to add to that. I mean, we are in an environment where social media and apps have become a massive part of what we do on a daily basis. So in addition to kind of very technical software, if you know a bunch of apps, like if you use Canva and any kind of project management apps and any kind of information management apps, and you use social media in a particular way, and you have a YouTube channel and you write a blog and you can create and edit your own videos, or you have been a guest on a podcast, or you're making your own podcast. Talk about that as well, because it's all saying that you have a curiosity around the way in which we engage with the world, and that you've taught yourself how to use some of these things. And a lot of these things are apps and platforms that we're using more and more and more in both promoting ourselves as a professional brand, and that organizations are looking for people to be able to use in how they show up in the world. So, and I've met a number of people recently who haven't a clue about half of these apps and have never been onto YouTube and have never listened to a podcast. And then I've met a bunch of people who are making their own personal promotion videos and putting them onto LinkedIn every day and are showing up as themselves. And the two personas are completely different. One says, I'm very curious about the world and I'm very engaged and I teach myself how to use things. And the other says, I'm scared and I stay in my comfort zone and I don't know what's out there. And I really want to encourage you to be the one who's putting yourself out there and learning and being curious and trying things.
If I can just add to that, because you're speaking a language I understand, whereas Ayanda was talking about IT, which I can't help with at all. Sorry, Ayanda. But I think, Dakolo, maybe what you could also do is add that to your LinkedIn profile. So all the maps that you have made or any of the work that you've done, go and post that. And if you are able to go and improve it, show it before and after and what you've done and contributed to improving the quality of whatever the work that you've done. I think that would add a lot to your LinkedIn profile. It would also show people that are looking for that skill that you are capable of doing it, to show the degree of work that you've done. And if you're not employed, that's some way that you could start off by doing, is improving these maps. There was a guy, I think he was also potentially in Indonesia. I don't know if Tamara can agree or not, but he was making 3D images. He was taking maps and making into a 3D sort of topographical image, and that also went viral, and I'm pretty sure he's gone very quiet, so I'm sure he's found a nice new job. So it really does help a lot. So that would be my advice.
May I just add a comment on the map making? If you are posting things, how you improve other people's work, it's definitely important to get like written confirmation from the creator of the map. Otherwise you can get sued, and that's not good. So definitely get like confirmation, or I don't know what the other word is.
Or just approval.
Permission.
Yeah.
But I meant more so from yourself, Dakolo. It would also be really interesting to see your change, sort of from a basic map that you did when you first started learning the software to then how you're improving it. So you'd have sort of map made in 2014 versus map made in 2020. You can show how your skills have increased more so. But I agree, don't get yourself in trouble with the law.
Yes.
Okay.
There was something else that I just wanted to add on the level of competency. Is that Andy Clay, I don't know, Sarah, you might know who Andy Clay is, but he gave me advice in my honours year, is always to keep a logbook of every single thing you do in your professional capacity. I must say I have been slacking with that, and like I said, hindsight is 20/20. But if you are able to, on each project that you work on, write down, okay, I used QGIS in conjunction with MapTech, with this, you write down all the software you use for that project, in which year, for which company, and how long you've used it, because you're going to forget what, and you need to say exactly what you did when using that, why you used it, because 2 years down the line, 1 year down the line, you're going to forget what you did. And then the other thing that Tanya Marshall also talks about with competency, it might take me a long time. It might take me 5 years to become competent with the software before I can say I'm an expert. But I mean, Sejo is a quick learner. He might pick that up in a year. So your level of expertise also doesn't have anything to do with a time span. I mean, I could have been using the software for 5 years and call myself an expert, but I might not be an expert. Just because I've used it 5 years doesn't make me an expert. So it's definitely where your ethics come in as well. Definitely in industry, ethics is a big thing. Because if you it takes away your credibility if you lied about something.
Yeah. You could be an expert in a part of the software.
Yes.
So for instance, I can use Excel to do budget, but I can't do pivot tables, and I can't do macros, and I can't do all sorts of things that I'm pretty sure you technical people can do, because you use it as part of your analysis the whole time. So I have expertise in developing budgets using Excel, but that's as far as my expertise goes. Just in terms of, I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page in terms of time is sometimes important, especially if you're putting yourself as a competent person. So that's where having 5 years of experience in a particular context, in a particular resource is important. But in other contexts, absolutely. The more you apply yourself in something and the more complex your experience is of something, the more expertise you're developing. And if you do the same thing 200 times over 20 years versus the same thing in completely different contexts and different environments and in different resources, your level of expertise is going to be quite different from one person to the next. So fleshing that out quite clearly is important. So Mukhao, you said here, can I list software that I've used without a supporting certificate to show my competency? So competency is made up of a number of different things, okay? There's experience. So you can be able to do something and have never been certified in it because you've developed a bank of experience by having been exposed to things and having applied yourself, okay? There's aptitude. So you can be competent in something because you have a natural intrinsic ability to do that thing, okay? So I always use the example of Usain Bolt. I can run, but very badly and very slowly. Usain Bolt is an Olympic runner and he's really fast and he's brilliant in it. And that's aptitude. He has an aptitude for running because his body is intrinsically designed for it. Mine is not. I am intrinsically designed for sitting at a computer and having webinars like this. He is not, okay? So that is aptitude. Then you've got knowledge. And knowledge can be knowledge that you acquire through studies, through certificates, through degrees, through diplomas, etc., etc. But you can have 100 different degrees and still not have experience, okay? So if you've only ever learned through a book, but you've never been to site, your competence is limited to your academic understanding of something, but it doesn't extend to your applied experience of something. And then the final part of competence is your skills. So if you think about an artist, we can all draw, but an artist who is a fine artist has spent years and years and years developing her skills in fine art to a point where she can sell her art professionally. Nobody is ever going to buy my art, but I can still draw, and I can still paint, but I don't have that fine skill. The 10,000 hours that you've put into refining that skill to the point where you can do it perfectly, whereas I would be doing it quite roughly. And all of those come together to define competence. So long answer short to your question, yes, if you have experience in a particular piece of software and you can demonstrate that experience and you can defend what you say about that experience, absolutely put it on. If you don't have a certificate, it's less important than saying you have the experience to use something. Certificates give you the kind of the formal qualification, but they definitely don't give you competence. It's your application of your knowledge that gives you competence. Is age a factor when it comes to looking for a job because I've been rejected for a position before because of my age? Ayanda, you've asked that question. I'd love to understand more about that. And then I think we must have that as our last question and close up.
Hello, hi again. Yeah, the question is, I've been rejected because I was told that I'm too old for a certain position. They said I'm overqualified for a junior position and underqualified for a senior position. So that left me confused because I don't know how to put it, because that left me confused. I don't know if you get my question.
No, I completely get it. It's a very frustrating position to be in. And, you know, from an employer's perspective, they don't want to employ anybody who is overqualified for a position, because as much as you might want the job, by the time you've been in it a few months, you're going to be getting frustrated. And so their perception is that if somebody is overqualified or is older than the peer group in that particular position, it's going to cause frustration both within yourselves and within others, and you may very quickly be wanting a higher level position that isn't necessarily available. It doesn't make it right for you because you just want a job, but the employer is looking at it from the organization's perspective of how long are you going to stay in that job before you get frustrated because you are over-skilled for what is required. And often what happens is when people are over-skilled or overqualified for a job, they start to get bored very quickly. And if there's nothing else to absorb their attention, it can become quite destructive in an organization. So not to say that you would be destructive, but that is the organizational experience of people who are overqualified. The flip side of that is that if you are underqualified for a position, it takes a lot of management time and effort to skill you up to the point where you are able to stand on your own 2 feet in a position. And organizations want people who can be productive as fast as humanly possible. So people who are overqualified, they worry about in terms of how long they're going to stay in the position and what that means in terms of having to replace them again fairly soon. And people who are underqualified, organizations worry about in terms of the amount of management time they're going to have to put into getting that person to a point where they can stand on their own 2 feet in that position. It makes life very difficult for you. And the questions that I would be asking if I was you, especially when it comes to being underqualified, would be, what are the things that I have to do in order to get myself qualified for this position? Is it more studies? Is it more years of experience? Is it developing a particular skill? Is it exposure to a particular environment? And ask for quite specific guidance on what's going to help you get to that point. But yeah, I feel for you because you're kind of caught in between two boundaries, and that's a really hard place to be. And if you've got any feedback, or you found this useful, or you would like more of these, I'm more than happy to do one of these a month on Saturday morning. So let me know what would be useful, and I would love to keep helping as much as I can. Okay. And for social media, because I'm such a social media butterfly, I would love a screenshot. So can I ask you all to go onto your videos so that we can have a nice picture of everybody? Yay! Cool. So what pose should we do, Sarah? Should we all just do a kind of a big thumbs up? Okay. All right. Everybody do a big thumbs up. I'm taking a screenshot now. Okay. And I need to do the second page because we are over 2 different pages. So I'm going to do another one. So everybody, because you don't know if you're on my first page or my second page, everybody do another thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Thanks for pitching up. Well done on investing time in yourselves. And I would love to see your posts on LinkedIn saying what you learned from this. And I would love your feedback when you get around to it. So have a wonderful rest of Saturday and a great weekend, and all the best with updating your CVs.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.